Telescope Store Tours on episode 488 of the Actual Astronomy Podcast. I'm Chris, and joining me is Shane. We are amateur astronomers who love looking up the night sky, and this podcast is for everybody who enjoys going out under the stars. Have you been able to get out and do any astronomy in the past? I think it's been like 3 weeks since we recorded or something like that, maybe more.
Yeah, it's been a little while, and the answer is no. I've been going to bed earlier now, so I like to turn in at about 9:30, and I don't think it really gets anywhere close to twilight till about 10:30 right now.
No, no, that
So
is early.
yeah, yeah. How about yourself?
I I've been going to bed later. No. But yeah, in general, I find if I go to bed much before about 10:30-ish, then I will wake up at about 12:30, and it's almost like I have jet lag. My body thinks that it's like 7:30 in the morning or something, and I'm up and ready to go, and I'll be awake for hours if I do that. I've tried it in the past, and it's not my cycle, that's for sure.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. I did do a little solar observing with the 40 millimeter double stack a
Oh,
couple
well, that's
weeks
still
ago.
observing.
Yeah, yeah, a little bit. It was super limited. Like I don't know that I was out for more than 20 minutes, but that is all that I have to report.
Yeah, well, we had a lot of smoke here and there, folks. I think in the one of the previous episodes that recently came out, we had said it wasn't too smoky here, which was a reference to about a month ago, where we did have some smoke that moved in for a day or so and then moved out. But then at the end of May, it really moved in quite thick for some time, hey?
Yeah, yeah, we kind of were about a week and a half or so, and there's a couple days in between, that it would sort of reduce a bit, but yeah, it was thick for yeah, a little stretch there.
Yeah, I was here, moved in on the 30th, and I was out here at the cabin getting something Rebecca wanted in the morning on the Friday, and it was totally clear. I went up and had a cup of coffee at the observatory, and I could see that there was a good chance of smoke in the forecast. And I thought, well, it's at least a day away because it was so crystal clear. And within an hour, you couldn't see across the valley. It just descended. I think it was up high because it looked like it was cloudy, even though it was saying it was clear. But sometimes the forecast can do that. But then, yeah, you could kind of see it almost descending, and it got so bad. And then we left on Saturday and went to Ontario. And that morning when we got up, like the smoke was kind of like billowing, like around, like down the street. You could see it, just as if like the fire was just, sort of over the hills, so to speak, eh? It was
Hmm.
nuts.
Wow.
So, and then we did a trip to Ontario. So I thought maybe I would talk a little bit about that, Shane.
Yeah, I'm curious to hear about your
Mm.
return to the Telescope Museum and some other adventures you had.
Yeah, it was a bit of a good trip, except for the smoke. And I kind of said I took a trip to the big smoke. I went to Ontario, or Toronto, but we didn't escape the smoke, or at least not for long, because we got in on Saturday, and by Tuesday the smoke moved back in. So we got about 3 days reprieve from the smoke, and it was not too bad for a few days, and then on the Thursday when we went up to Kitchener Waterloo, it got really bad that night, and was fairly aggressive for the rest of our trip, sadly. So when we left here though, Shane, I couldn't believe it because I've flown when we've had these smoke plumes before, like even in 2023, we went to Ottawa um, around the same time. And you could kind of see it down below, but you could still see the ground. And this time when we flew, you could not see the ground. It was completely overcast, except that there were no clouds. The air was completely free of clouds, but the smoke, and we never climbed out of the smoke. We were still in the smoke at like 37,000 feet or whatever they were flying at, which I think he did say we were flying at. and we were in a zone of the air column where there was less smoke, but you could see smoke above us. You could see it. It was like a gray band on the horizon and sort of thick above us. So, it was as if it was much brighter and it was kind of sort of sunny. But we weren't out of the smoke even at 37,000 feet. So I was surprised at that.
Yeah, yeah, that's I wouldn't have expected that.
And we flew towards Chicago and we didn't see any land. And like I said, I had been watching the forecast because I was curious to see where we would run out of it. And just as we got, I think, to Lake Michigan, that's where you could start to see anything down below. We could kind of start to see the water, and then as we got over the U.S., you could start to see the land on the other side of Lake Michigan, like barely the first shoreline. Second shoreline we could see, and then you could see the land, and it was barely smoking. I was thinking, wow, we're going to have quite a bit of smoke in southern Ontario. And then once we got to I think Lake Superior or if I'm getting that right. Anyway, we it petered out pretty quick. But like I said, within a few days, that gradually moved over us as well. But it was pretty interesting to fly for hours. Like the trip is, I think 3 hours or so, and I would say 2 hours of it ish we couldn't see the ground at all for the smoke. And that was from multiple fires, not just the ones here or the ones in Alberta, but there was ones in Ontario, and just the way that the currents were taking it, we were flying over the bulk of it. It was kind of shocking to just to see that much smoke. You think, at one point Rebecca said, "Well, if we, moved here, moved there, or an hour one side or the other of the city, would it be better?" And it's like, well, no, you'd have to move like, thousands of miles. This stuff is going forever.
Yeah, yeah, it really had a wide coverage.
Yeah. Anyway, it's hopefully we're getting a lot of rain. We're having a big rainstorm here today, folks, and supposed to get upwards of 80 mils, I think, if I heard that right. I'm not sure we'll get that right here, but in
Mhm.
places around, it's supposed to get lots of rain. But I think it only goes so far to the north, and there are some fires north of where this rain is going to land. So I'm sort of just expecting more of the same.
Yeah. Well, yeah, hopefully the north can get some rain and put out or change the conditions anyway, so it's
Mm,
less favorable for fire activity.
yeah. So anyway, I took this trip down to Toronto and had a few things on my agenda. I was going to go to a couple telescope stores, and I wanted to go to the Royal Ontario Museum and see some family and friends. And that worked out great. I was able to have lunch with Michael Wright. He's the president of the KW Center. He's also a listener and supporter of the podcast, and sort of has become one of those individuals who I write with quite frequently because he's also a sketcher, and so it was really nice to be able to have lunch together and then sit down, and I was able to go through his sketchbook and actually several sketchbooks, and it was fantastic. I love doing that, but it never seems to do it justice because people have dozens or hundreds of sketches, and then you're kind of just flipping through, and it's like this sketch that this person maybe had spent, considerable time on, you're just looking at for a few seconds and going, oh, that's great, but I got to look at the next one because we only have like an hour here.
Hmm.
So but yeah, he had some great sketches of Venus and lots of galaxies. There was quite a few I'd never seen before that are going to go on my list for sure. And yeah, all kinds of different stuff. And he'd started observing with a 4.5 inch, I think it was like a Bushnell or something, one of those 4.5 inch reflectors that often are kicking around in people's closets or sheds or whatever,
Okay.
and and just some fantastic sketches through that. And then he eventually got a 12-inch Dobsonian. But anyway, I put a shot in of the view of Toronto there at night. I think that's a plane in the distance. We could not see any stars from there. I think we did see the moon, I think, on one of the nights. And then I went over to Con Scope Center. That's just in the I guess sort of in the northern part of Toronto, if I'm describing that right. I know how to get there, and took the subway up to York. What's it called? Yorkdale Shopping Mall. I don't know if have you ever been to Yorkdale?
Oh, I can't remember. I've been to Toronto a couple times, but only really stayed there, oh, probably 25 years ago. So I don't
Hmm.
remember a lot of the places where I was.
Yeah, it's got a lot of fancy stores that I didn't go into,
Mm.
but anyway, you get the subway to there. I love taking the subway, and so I went over and Ray Khan's the guy who owns it. And I've bought lots of stuff, not lots of stuff, but I've bought a few things like I have through most of the astronomy stores in Canada over the years. And I think I think I bought something else. Can't remember what it was. And then the previous thing I bought a few years back was the 22 Nagler. I got that from Ray, and he had given me this really good deal on it. It was kind of a funny thing where he had like a sometimes he'll do these things. I'm on his newsletter just for this purpose. Every once in a while, he'll just decide he's going to sell something for cost and just throw it out in the newsletter. And I was, I think you'll recall, I was looking for a 22 Nagler or thinking about it. And then I got an email from him saying, yeah, I'm going to put this up on sale today and free shipping. And I was like, basically, it's at cost and free shipping. So I ended up buying that from him. But I went to the store and all these telescope stores, people haven't been. I find they're all, in a way, they're all very similar, such that they have a flotilla of mostly used and some new gear that's sitting out, or I'd say maybe 50-50-ish, something like that. And then this was no different. Had some interesting scopes. I think the one in the first photo there is the I think it's like a Skywatcher or William Optics 80 millimeter ED. But it's big. It looks like a 4 or maybe even a 5-inch scope. It's a little bit oversized and pretty beefy. And I always thought that was kind of a neat scope. I think it's like f6 or f7 or something.
Okay.
And he did have a few other neat used scopes. I'll just jump around in my notes here a little bit, but he had a Genesis SDF 5.4 that the scope was in excellent shape. Some of the other parts weren't amazing, but that's fine. Like you can always, it was like there was like a rusty nut or something like that. Um, but that can happen just in the general wear and tear of an instrument. So that was neat. He also had some of the newer, well, new in stock, Skywatcher 102 F5s. And so Ray wasn't on his associate was there. I can't remember the gentleman's name. Real nice guy. And he said that he thought they would sell those OTAs, which often you don't see for sale separate from like getting it on some sort of Skywatcher mount.
Okay.
So I thought that was kind of cool. So if people are looking for, particularly if you're in Canada, people are looking for a Skywatcher Acromat OTA. I think you can get in touch with Conscope Center, and they might hook you up with one. But they had all kinds of neat stuff. The other thing that caught my attention was, and you could walk by it. Well, and I did twice. Then I was like, is that a 16-inch Meade ACF sitting on the floor? And they were like, yep. That's quite the instrument. I think they had the tripod and everything for it there, but I mean, I can understand why you just wouldn't want to leave that set up. They had a 12-inch, it might have been an ACF or maybe a LX200 set up as well. Those are big, big instruments.
Yeah, that
Anyway,
16-inch has to weigh quite a bit, I would think.
oh man, I don't know what it would weigh. It's got to weigh a handy 70 pounds, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's big. It's bigger than the water heater that burned in my cabin here last month.
Hmm.
Um, a few things. Let's see. Well, they had tons of used gear, and this is one thing I noticed. And Ray's shop, and I went to KW Telescope when I was in KW. Thanks to Michael Wright, because I had forgotten or wasn't really tuned in with the fact that they had moved, and I was just going to walk there, and he was like, "Yeah, we can't walk there from here," and I'm like, "Oh," he's like, "They moved," so he drove me there. I never would have gotten there, so that's thanks to Michael Wright. But anyway, um, these telescope stores have tons of used gear and like some really awesome used gear. And I'm just really surprised they don't put it up on the website. I don't know why. Like, I guess maybe for lack of time, maybe they get enough walk-in traffic, but they had a Conscope Center. They had like a few of, I think they had at least a couple of the Celestron 2.5X Barlows. And I think they were like 80 or $90, which is, about a 20% discount off new. But that was one that kind of caught my eye. And they had some Teleview big 2X Barlows. What else did they have? They had quite a few interesting eyepieces. I think maybe like a Morpheus eyepiece, and I'm just sort of handpicking a few things. I didn't put all the shots of the used gear from Con Scope Center in, but they had quite a bit of stuff. And the guy said, "Oh, we have even more out back if you want to see that kind of thing." They had lots of used gear, and I got to say that's one of the best parts about going to a telescope store is you can actually go in and I didn't do it there because I was just by myself and I didn't want to bother the person who was working there. If Ray had been there, I might have gone through the stuff a little bit more, and then yeah, just it's just cool to be able to go in and see this stuff for yourself. One of them was one thing that I did want to hold in my hand because it's something that I've considered, and I think I'm not going to consider anymore. But no knock on Scope Center is the 4X PowerMate. I've
Oh
never
yeah.
seen one in person. Have you ever seen one of these?
Uh, no, I don't think so.
And it's basically a focal extender or a magnifier. Barlow type device, but it doesn't increase the eye relief. And that is a massive piece of equipment. It's almost the same size and weight as one of those Explore Science 92 degrees.
Holy
And
smokes, that's heavy.
it is. And they let me take it out and look at it because really like I'm considering it. And if I bought it, I would have bought it from Ray and Conscope Center simply because they've been pretty fair on the Teleview pricing with me in the past. And wow, I said I just don't think I can live with this. It's a lot of glass and it's big. And I know my scope can handle it, but as you know, when you're using a scope and you've seen me use mine, you kind of have to futz with the eyepiece a little bit to get it angled right so it's easy to look through. Well, if it was another 4 or 5 inches out of the focuser, whatever you're doing, you're going to just want to put that in and use. I guess maybe you could use it like that. I couldn't really see myself observing that way, so I was out
Hmm.
at that point and have reconsidered my options. It's just the reality, one of the downsides of the internet, Shane's, not to rag on the internet too much, but is that, when you're looking at all this stuff online, it's easy to kind of get caught up in it and think about it incorrectly. But when you hold that piece of gear in your hand, it's a totally different reality, eh?
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes you just have to have that visceral experience really to appreciate the size.
Oh, yeah. I'll say this, they had tons of Teleview eyepieces, Panoptics, Naglers, Plossels, Barlows, PowerMates. They had everything there, and they were expecting to get some of the Nagler Type 7s in as well. They said those were due, I don't know, sometime this month or something. So I thought that was really nice. They also had like a huge selection, I think, of the Sharp Star refractors, mostly for imaging. And boy, they must have had 2, 4, 6, 8. I think they had 8 or 10 of them there. Just a display cabinet filthy with them. Well, no, I mean it was clean, but it was full of them. And then a small assortment of the William Optics. and all the accessories to go along with that for imaging. So that's nice because if somebody was just looking to get into imaging, they could walk in and kind of look at the stuff for themselves and make a decision. They had the bunch of the William Optics, what are they called? Smart cats or those little refractors for imaging in a
Mm-hmm.
separate cabinet as well.
Was there, um, or have you heard if there's been any tariff impact on Nagler IP, like Nagler gear and, or, Teleview gear in general?
Well, he said that they had made an adjustment to the price. But I haven't. I don't know the impact. I think the
Hmm.
impact is going to be more tertiary, like there's these steel and aluminum tariffs.
Hmm.
And I think that's probably where we're going to see it. And then, like I forget what he said the increase was on the Power Mate, but it wasn't like it doubled in price. It was like, I want to say maybe it was somewhere handy of a 5% or so increase. So, I mean, yeah, things are going up, but my concern was, oh, it's everything's going to double. So that's kind of why I was thinking maybe about even getting the Power Mate sooner than later. But no, it's an increase, which is never amazing, but it's not like a doubling of everything or anything like that.
Hmm.
Uh, but they also had, I think they had all of the um, Beta Hyperions, and I think perhaps all of the Celestron Excels, and perhaps all of the Beta Morpheus. And if they were missing one, it was probably because someone just went in and bought it. Because I think they keep that stuff just in stock.
Oh,
And
okay.
they may have had a few other lines as well. I was really impressed with that because so often I've gone into telescope stores in the past. It's been a long time since I've really gone to some. And, if you wanted to look at an eyepiece or whatever, they wouldn't have it. They didn't have like all the Naglers there, but like it was a good selection. It was if you were looking for one, there was a shooting chance they had it there. If you were looking for a Beta eyepiece, I'm pretty sure they had them all there. I was impressed with that.
Well,
That
that's
was
good.
nice. Yeah, that was nice. And I really appreciate them letting me take out the Teleview 4X PowerMate. But yeah, I think if somebody's in the market for an astro imaging rig, and they're in, or like a Teleview or particularly a better eyepiece, I think you can rest assured that's a good place to go, even just to see some of this stuff. And as always, check your pricing and that. Make sure you know what you're getting into. Because once you get into the stores, then you just want to make sure that you don't blow your budget. I'll put it that
Hmm.
way.
Yeah,
Okay,
and it can become very tempting.
it can, it can. There was a few things there. Like I was tempted, and part of me kind of even thought there was a few things that I was interested in getting. One of them was a Celestron Excel 2.3 mil. I really thought I'd been thinking about that, and they had them there. They also had them at KW Telescope, and the pricing was right. Like I think they were about $100, but I didn't. I already have quite a few eyepieces, and I can get that power with a Barlow and that I already own and the Pentax XWs.
Hmm. Hmm.
Went off to the Royal Ontario Museum. No, not much astronomy stuff there, but I did take some. I think I may have sent them, or at least I put them in the notes of. Went to see some dinosaurs, which of course were astronomically impacted by an asteroid. So,
Hmm. Hmm.
without that event 65 million years ago or whatever it was, we wouldn't be seeing them in the museums today.
Yeah, yeah.
So that was kind of cool. Not sure if you've ever, I mean, for me, it's like you just don't get the opportunity to go and look at dinosaur bones like on such a scale. Though we do have a dinosaur museum here, and I think we have that Scotty T-Rex here. I've gone to see the skulls down in the T-Rex skulls and some of the other dinosaurs down in East End, Saskatchewan. That's pretty
Hmm.
cool.
Yeah, that's a
But
great museum there as well. And I think, isn't that the most complete T-Rex skeleton in the world or North America? Or there's something distinctive about it.
I think there's a few things. Yeah, I think it's perhaps the most complete. I'm pretty sure it's the largest.
Ah, okay, yeah, maybe that's
I
it too.
I think that's it. I think that's it. And here in Saskatchewan, of course, they just have, just sort of immediately what's been found in the area and in the ROM. They have quite a few, although they sort of had them out in this funny temporary exhibit, which was a little bit disappointing. The lighting, like even in my photo, and you know how the camera adjusts for dim light. Um, the photo like shows how dark it was in this area, and they kind of had it cordoned off, so they're rebuilding it. But they had, I think, many of the dinosaurs out, but not all of them. So that was a little bit of a disappointment, which was fine. And then I went over to the mammal, I think it's called the mammal exhibit or something like that, or I think it says that, but it's not all mammals. Clearly, in my photograph, you can see crustaceans there, which are not mammals. Um, and I went over to the gem exhibit too, which was pretty cool to walk through. You would love that there, Shane.
Hmm.
I should send you some of those photos. I didn't take that many in there. And one of the reasons why I didn't take that many photos in the gem exhibit is somebody was in there sketching, and I thought they must have been with the museum staff. And then I noticed somebody else was sketching, and then there was other people around that were sketching in the museum. And so there was this person sketching the Western Atlantic exhibit, as it was called, which I'm not sure why it was called that, which was right next to a bison, which I thought was funny because they had a sunfish. People can look up what a sunfish is like and a bison side by side. And I was like, huh, I'm probably one of the few people that's ever walked through this that has basically been in the water with a sunfish and also camped in a field with the bison. So thought that was kind of neat. But there was this gentleman there sketching and beautiful, fantastic sketches. Like without really interfering, he was in a large open area. I could kind of see and he was taking a break just as I came up and I, sort of asked if I could sort of interrupt him or whatever. He was a super friendly person, and it turned out he was an animator, like a digital animator with the Star Trek movies.
Oh, really? Well, that's
Yeah,
interesting.
and that he just did the sketching as a hobby. It wasn't anything he was doing for work. He just found it really relaxing and peaceful. And anyway, it was really cool. And so I said I do some sketching in astronomy. That's my thing, but nothing like this. And he was using this Copic ink just from Michael's, nothing fancy as far as equipment went, but I asked, and he showed me his sketchbook. So we stood there talking about sketching and that in the middle of the museum in the middle of the day on my trip to Ontario, and that was really, really a surprise and really neat. And I went through his sketchbook. He was flipping through it, and he had this amazing sketch of a tortoise that was in the rack behind us. And he must be going in there because he said he had done it the other day or whatever. And he wasn't originally from Ontario, and this was his hobby. He would go to the museum on mornings or afternoons off or whatever, and just sketch. He must have bought a pass, and that's he's kind of like working his way through the racks. And I mean, it took me 2 hours just to kind of do a very quick walkthrough on probably half the museum, if that. And so I can't imagine how long it's going to take to kind of go through. And I think he's just sort of picking one or two things in each of the cabinets. But I thought the tortoise was amazing, and my image of it here doesn't do it justice. But I thought that was pretty cool. You can see with the Copic ink, there's like a silhouette of a bird on the other side, and that's the Copic ink kind of bleeds through the paper. But I'd never really seen Copic ink being used before. Yeah, you got to. There's no erasing with that, eh? So that was pretty cool. So anyway, and then we met up with some other family and friends and that when we were in Ontario, and then went off and I had lunch with Michael Wright on Friday, which was a couple weeks ago now, and and then I mentioned perhaps going over to KW Telescope, which was kind of funny because we were in Kitchener, Ontario, and and I thought that we could just walk over to it from where we were having lunch. I used to work down there, and And he said, "Oh no, they moved." And I was like, "Oh." And then I thought, well, we're probably not going to go because, he didn't really sign up to drive me all over Kitchener, Ontario. So he was like, "No, no, we'll go over. Let's go over." So then he drove me over. So that was really nice. And we spent maybe, I want to say about an hour there. I think I sent you a pile of these photos, but they had quite a few rigs set up there. It's a really big shop though. That shop is enormous.
Yeah, yeah, it looks pretty large. Wow.
They had a lot of different things there. Like they had quite a few of the batter stuff. In fact, I'll go through it. They had, if you're looking for a batter adapter, call KW Telescope. I think they've got them all there just about in stock, which could save you some time, weight, and aggravation ordering them. I wish I had known they had all the adapters there, just all over the store, and I'm sure that they could find you the one that you need there. Um, it looked like mostly they had used telescopes out there. They had a few that were new. They had a bunch of the Vixen stuff they had gotten from, I forget, it's like the Star guy or whatever his name was when he was going out of business. And they have a bunch of the Burleback stuff there too.
Mm.
A fairly good selection of Burleback stuff. But some of the interesting things they had there, they had brand new Questar.
Brand new Questar. Well, isn't Questar out of business?
Well, yeah, and I think he must have got just about and he was telling me about it. He was like that
Hmm.
he had been ordering them, and then I don't know, like I guess people must be getting them. I mean, not many people, even when they were in business, and they only recently went out, he said, and he told me all about it. I won't get into all the details. If you want to know all the details, take a trip to KW Telescope, and Brian will tell you about it all. But um, not I don't think many people would carry those, even if they could get them. And he had a brand new one sitting there. I did not ask to take it out and look at it because I think they're, around $6,000 or so, plus or minus, depending on the
Yeah,
options of it. But
I'm on his website.
um,
7 to 8.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
gee.
But I gotta say though, and I've seen a few of them over the years. I don't know if I've ever looked through one, but I've seen a few. And I have to say, I think this was the most beautiful one that he had there. I think it's one of the newest ones, most recent anyway. And the photo through the glass, like it's unfortunate because there's no reflections. Like his glass is really nice glass, and you can see right in. It's just like there's no glass there, so there was no point in even having him take it out. Um, but they are just the most beautiful little telescopes, I have to say, even for a compound instrument. They are just exquisite. Like it's just unbelievable how beautiful they are in person when you think at that price, oh, six, seven, $8,000 Canadian, mind you, and which I think would be about upwards of $5,000 US, something like that, just my quick back of the envelope. But when you see it in person, you go, yeah, I can kind of see it. Like you can kind of
Yeah.
see it in the quality. It's
And,
there.
and that's a 3.5 inch, right? Because there's a 7.1, I think. That's even pricier.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. He didn't have any of the sevens, but he had the 3.5. There was a person in Regina that had a seven for a while.
Really?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. And I think he was a financier of some sort. And I got to know him a little bit. This was years ago. And when he first made some money, he decided that he wanted to do astronomy and then he would buy the very best telescope. And then he went out and bought a 7-inch Questar. And then he decided to get out. So he sold it he said he felt burned by it. He sold it somewhere. And he didn't get as much money as he thought he should have gotten for it. But anyway, it's a side story. Um, but yeah, these 3.5s are beautiful. But he also had some used, I don't know if it was used actually. Maybe I'm misspeaking because I almost can't even believe there was a 48 millimeter Vernon scope EFL. I think there was some other Vernon scope paraphernalia there too. Um, So this is a 2 inch plus 1 1/4, had an adapter of some sort on it. Not really sure how that works. I don't know why you would have a 1 1/4 adapter on a 48 millimeter Vernon scope eyepiece. And it was fairly expensive, 360, but that's a neat eyepiece, Shane, right there.
Yeah, yeah, different, that's for sure.
And he had some of the Vernon scope other accessories and some of the Vernon scope. I think a diagonal and some other eyepieces and that sort of thing. But of course, the Questar was like sort of the piece de resistance in my mind. He had some Takahashi's. A Takahashi dealer, I believe, had a FSQ 106 and the baby tack. I think the 85 millimeter. And I was looking at everything, and then he was like, "How come you're not looking at the Takahashis?" And I was like, "I own a few, or I own two, and my friends own a few,
Hmm.
get, get to look at lots of Takahashis." And I'm not, those are imaging scopes for the most part, although I hear the odd person using them for visual. I think that would be interesting, but the price of admission is more than I could bear. Speaking of which, they had that Zeiss. I sent you a photo of the Zeiss APQ
Mm.
100 640. I think that's your dream scope, isn't it?
Yeah, I would love to have one of those. My bank account disagrees with my brain though, so I'm not sure it'll happen.
15K with the mount, he said. I don't know. I don't quote me
Hmm.
on that price, folks.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
That actually doesn't sound too bad. Especially that, I assume that's Canadian dollars, and with the
yeah,
mount, that seems pretty reasonable.
yeah, and again, and I've put these photos in, Shane. You're welcome to put them up with our notes, because one of the things that surprised me the most is a lot of the stuff, and neither on Con's website too. They don't seem to put their used equipment up. And I sort of couldn't believe that there was a Zeiss EPQ there, and that I don't know, it might be on consignment or something. I think that's kind of how these shops do it. So I don't know how much they invest in actually putting the stuff on the internet, but that's a heck of a scope. And again, it was in this back room, um, and it's an impressive scope on this big mount. I have other photos too, if anybody wants them. But that's Zeiss. I mean, just to see a Zeiss like that in person is pretty incredible. As you know, you've had some of this Zeiss equipment before. It's pretty amazing stuff.
Yeah, and that APQ is just supposed to be unbelievable. I believe is it an oil-spaced triplet? I can't remember now, but
I feel like perhaps it is, but I don't know. But
yeah, I would love to look through one day.
reportedly, I mean that's about the finest, and what a beautiful focal ratio. F6.4, so
Hmm.
you have a really nice exit pupil with a 40 millimeter Pentax or like eyepiece.
Yeah, exactly.
One thing they had there that somebody should call and get to KW Telescope is they had a complete set of the Burnham's Celestial Handbook by
Mm.
Robert Burnham Jr. in mint condition. And don't quote me on the price, but I think it was like $20 a book. So that's $60 for all three, which is the exact price that I paid for a similar set of mint condition hardcover um, set of these books back in 2006 or 2007. So, for those that do the math, that's almost like half price from what I paid for it 20 years ago. So, that's pretty phenomenal. And they were in, I didn't go through them all in great detail, but to my eye, and I did look at them briefly, they looked like they were in pretty much mint condition. And these books are now getting on to what, like 30-ish years anyway, since they've been selling them, eh?
Yeah, it's one of my favorite sets actually. I reference it quite regularly. I have e-copies as well as physical copies, and the the e-copies on my Kindle are super handy to take observing, like
Mm,
to grasslands or anywhere, because you don't have the big bulky book. It's not quite as
hmm.
nice to page through, but it's better
Yeah.
than nothing. So,
Yeah. I think having that physical copy and $60 is a steal for that. I
Hmm.
mean,
Hmm.
wow, for three hardcover books and like I said, basically in mint condition. Um, yeah, somebody should grab those. So yeah, that was kind of my trip, and then we went to uh, uh, Rebecca's sister's place on the weekend, and yeah, we went and visited with family mostly the rest of the time, and had some good meals out and that sort of thing. Saw some other friends, and yeah, it was a bit of a whirlwind trip. You think, almost 2 weeks is going to be a long time, but yeah, it's weird. I'm always reluctant to leave, and then always reluctant to come home. It's kind of the way traveling goes with me anyway. So, but yeah, it was a nice trip.
Oh, that's really good.
Yeah. And maybe I shouldn't even put this in, but I received the RESC service medal from the KW Center just after I got back, so that was nice too.
Oh, congrats. What is that all about? I'm not familiar with it.
Well, it's just for like contribution to the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada, and a bunch of people like Dave Chapman, Michael Wright, Clark Muir, people that Randall might be familiar with the show, put together and put in an application, mostly I think for things like being the National Observing Chair, which I did for years, and also for like the calendar work and that type of stuff. Generally, over the years, contributing to the society and making hopefully a positive contribution. So that was really cool. I really like that you get this medal. It's really neat. It's big. It's like I don't know, a couple inches across ish. So
Mm,
yeah, it's really
very
nice.
nice. I'll have to check that out in person.
Yeah, yeah. Then we had an email here from Ben H. So not sure if you want to read it. I can sort of reply.
Yeah, sure. So he said, "Hi guys. I hope you both are well and enjoying some warmer weather. I'm sure you are already aware, but in case you're not, your episode Thunder keeps getting stolen by the 365 Days of Astronomy podcast. Over the past few months, they have used your next unreleased episode before you release it on the actual astronomy podcast. This may affect your data, I suppose, with listener numbers being captured by the 365 podcast crew. Also, over the years, listening to you both discuss binocular observing, I have been motivated to buy a few different pairs. I've had some really nice nights with my current pair of Pentax 10 by 50s. A pair of Canon image stabilized 15 by 50s appeared on the secondhand market where I live, and it raised my curiosity. I've never looked through a pair of eye or image stabilized binoculars, and I'm wondering if they make much difference. Oof, I think you and I both have a strong
Mm.
opinion there.
Hmm.
He goes on to say the cost is shocking to say the least, with we're at $2,000 new in Australia. Yes, the price tag is not fun. Um, but I have been thinking of the 15 times magnification with 50 millimeter aperture, contrast, and an exit pupil of 3.34 millimeter. I would be interested to hear your thoughts and experiences if you have any to share. And then lastly, if you are looking for ideas for the episode, I would love if you added to your monthly calendar episodes some content on objects and constellations. Even if you focused on a constellation at a time and discussed objects to observe through binoculars, small aperture scopes, large aperture scopes, recommended magnification and filters, your best, worst, most challenging object, and lastly, can you recommend a good book for bino observing? And that's from Ben. Thanks for the email, Ben.
All right. Let me hop in. There's been a few people that asked about the 365 days of astronomy, and they're not really scooping us because they're not the ones that pick them. It's me. I have to pick them. And Shane, what it boils down to is that when we were doing 8 or 9, sometimes 10 shows a month, eh?
Yeah, we used to do two a week.
Yeah, which just oddly, the way it breaks down is some months we would end up doing like 10 episodes just because, like, or even more than 12 if we wanted to take some time off. And that just wasn't sustainable, eh?
No, no, it just
Because we just do
during
this for fun.
yeah, during the COVID years, we didn't have a lot to do. So, dedicating that time was pretty easy, but then, as we got back to normal life, that commitment just was starting to become a little difficult to maintain.
Yeah, and we even did it for a while, like long
Hmm.
after any lockdowns, and we were sort of back to working in person and all that kind of good stuff. We still did it for like another year and a half or so, maybe even longer, because I think it's only in the past year-ish that we reduced it to four. And what it breaks down to is that there's stuff that will fit for the 365 days of astronomy, and there's stuff that maybe doesn't fit as well. And so I kind of have to pick them a little bit, and because of that, sometimes, and I think it just end up piling up, that the ones that end up getting selected for the 365 shows um, were slightly out of cadence, and because we record early, and because we don't have a staff or anything, sometimes I'll go back and just pick. I start with the most recent ones that we recorded, and then, of course, they might get released early. I don't think that happened this time, and it shouldn't happen with our objects to observe. So it should only really average out over the long period, kind of once every couple months, probably over the long term. There'll be one that will get released a little bit earlier. And then, like, because sometimes somebody will be coming on. Like I think of the time that Dave Chapman came on and was talking about like the most recent one he came on in April, Shane, and he put
Hmm.
all this work into sort of like the history of the stars and everything, right? Remember, I think you'll remember that one.
Yeah, for sure.
I wish I had the title off the top of my head. My apologies, Dave. But see, that one Dave put a lot of work into, and I think the previous one and the previous one from that, we were just chatting and we were just talking about. I mean, sometimes I'll just ramble on about my observatory for too long or something, and those like don't fit as well in 365. So we put Dave's show in. It was just like an obvious no-brainer. So. Anyway, that's why that can happen sometimes. But over the long run, it should be like once every other month, I think is how often that should occur. All right, two binoculars,
Hmm.
image stabilized binoculars. Shane, what are your thoughts on? I think like in general, I think although Ben was asking about the 15 by 50s. There's a bunch of different ones. I'm not sure. Do you know what the current lineup is ish, at least for astronomy?
There's like a 10 by 30. I think they still have the 12 by 36s, 10 by
Hmm
42, 15 by 50, and they might even still have the 18 by 50s, but I'm not sure.
hmm Yeah. And then I think they released some other ones that are like 32 mil in aperture, but don't get as much love for the astronomy. So we'll just leave it at those ones. So in general, these are more expensive than your average binocular in general,
Yeah, for sure. Unless you're like,
buying
uh,
Swarovskis.
yeah, if you're comparing it to Zeiss, like, kind of the higher end ones, yeah, they're kind
Mm,
of, sometimes they're even less than that. So.
yeah. All right, so price to performance, I think is what we're what we're talking about. He said, I would be interested to hear your thoughts and experiences if you have any to share basically on the Canon image stabilized. What are your thoughts and experiences, Shane?
Yeah, I can really simplify this and just state that I really don't use any other binoculars anymore. Once I, like, now that I've gotten used to the image stabilization, I have a real hard time not using binoculars that have that because,
Mm,
like, holding binoculars as steady as possible is a bit of a skill that you sort of build over time. And
hmm
because I'm not really building that skill anymore, I just I can't handle the shakiness, especially like I should qualify. Daytime binoculars,
Mm,
image stabilizing isn't quite as important. I can get by
mm,
without it, although it's still a very nice thing to have. But when you're looking at stars and things in the night sky, any little shake drives me crazy. So if it doesn't have image stabilizing, I need them mounted on a tripod. It's just that simple.
hmm hmm
So like
I s-
when you factor
oh,
in the cost of a tripod and sort of the pain of setting up the tripod and the mount and all of that stuff, I kind of think you're almost net neutral with the image stabilized binoculars.
yeah, depending on which size you go
Hmm.
with. Um, I've been like I've spent time with all of them, the 10 by 30s, the 10 by 42s, um, the 12 by 36s. I think all they've had a few different variations. There was the original ones. I think the second edition, I think, is what you have, and then I have the third edition.
Hmm.
And Mike has the 10 by or 15 by 50s. I've spent probably almost the most amount of time with those, even factoring in mine, and then the 18 by 50s. And I'll run through it like this. This is my experience. So, for starters, worth the price. Regardless of which ones you get, it's like you're basically getting the best binocular in that size. And they work differently than a regular binocular in all better ways. So for starters, they work kind of in between where you think of a regular binocular and a small mounted telescope of like slightly larger aperture, maybe like 50% larger aperture. They kind of work in that zone. And that is just so like game changing when it comes to binocular observing. The 10 by 30s can be found relatively inexpensively. In fact, for not a whole lot more, maybe even in the realm of a really good pair of 10 by 50s. So if you were looking to buy a really good pair of 10 by 50s, I I gotta say I might favor getting the 10 by 30s over them. In fact, yeah, having used lots of 10 by 50s, they're big, they're hard to hold steady, as you said, Shane, and the light grasp when you have that image stabilizing turned on, I think is probably going to overrun the 10 by 50s much of the time, unless you have the 10 by 50s mounted, and then like you said, now you're already up into the realm of getting image stabilized binoculars anyway.
Hmm.
The next one's up, at least as far as price goes, tends to be the 12 by 36s. And for me, that's just the sweet spot. The 12 magnification with a 36 millimeter aperture in a binocular is really good magnification on the night sky and pretty good aperture. I use 7 by 35s a lot anyway, and then these ones are slightly larger with image stabilization with 12 power. The only thing I don't care for as much is the field of view is a little bit smaller than I would love to have, but that's it. That's my only critique of them. They are in a appropriate price range. I think 600 Canadian does seem like a lot, but they are just phenomenal. The and what are your because it was you getting the two. You've got the second edition, and I bought the third. I gotta say, I think they're almost identical. I forget. There's some sort of minor difference, but I
Yeah,
think you can only get the threes now.
I think with yours you just have to press the button to activate the stabilization.
No, you have to
And
hold it.
oh, you do have to hold it. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, then I'm not sure
yeah.
what the differences are.
Either it's I forget. It might be like an updated coding.
Mm.
It's something like that. But it was you getting those that put me over the top on getting them.
Yeah, they're
Because
fantastic. If they ever break, I'll replace them the same day.
yeah. And I'll tell you, because for comparison, I've used Mike's 15 by 50s probably almost as much or more now over the years as my 12 by 36s, which I got in 2023. And the 15 by 50s, I mean, if you want the best image stabilized binocular, that's the best one I think out of the whole lot of them. Perhaps. somebody with the 10 by 42s could argue. Um, but the um, but the 15 by 50s are a bit on the heavy side. And for me anyway, they work best when you're seated. Like pretty much you have to be seated to use them. Whereas the 12 by 36s, I'll use them standing, seated. It doesn't really seem to it's a little bit better seated. It's always just better to be seated when you're doing binocular astronomy anyway. But in the winter here, it's often hard to sit. And then as well, I'll end up using them quite a bit, like out the window and stuff like that in the like really freezing cold winter, like when we're having a close planetary pairing, or a planet getting close to the moon or something. I'll use them a lot in that situation, and they've worked beautifully for that. I think the 15 by 50s, are better as far as how much you can see goes. It's just how much are you going to be able to sit and use them? And I know Mike puts them on a tripod quite a bit. I think they are the best ones. It's just they're the best ones with that qualification that you really need to sit. And of course, they're about three times the cost, I think, as the 12 by 36s, which is, also a bit steep. But they are probably about three times better, maybe, perhaps. So,
I think the 12 by 36s have gone up. They're about $1,000,
oh,
and
are they?
the 15 by 50s are about 1,500. So it's
Yeah.
the gap is a much smaller now.
Yeah, well, I can understand it because I was really surprised how close my 12 by 36s were to Mike's, and I got them on sale and I bought them locally, so I didn't pay for shipping. Um, they just happened to have a pair open box or something like that, but honestly, I don't even think the box had been opened. And anyway, yeah, so they were just like basically almost half the price now, I guess, once you factor in all taxes and everything. Um, the 10 by 42s I've tried a couple times, and I guess my challenge with those ones are because I think those ones are even more expensive, or at least as expensive as the 15 by 50s. I don't know if you have your pricing there, Shane, but they are not inexpensive. And the only the only advantage of those over the 12 by 36s is they do have that one tap where you can tap the button and the stabilization stays on. And then also the field of view is 1.5 degrees larger. So they have about a 6.5 degree field of view versus the 5 degree of the 12 by 36, which is a little bit on the narrow side. But the trade-off is in the weight. And I guess that's where my problem is that they're a little bit lighter than the 15 by 50, but not light enough that I feel like I can really use them as effectively just like walking around. They weigh about the same as a traditional pair of 10 by 50s. And they have the image stabilization. So it depends. If somebody's super comfortable with the 10 by 50 weight and using those, then I think they can make more sense. But if you find those a bit tiring to hold, you're really just going to get almost as tired using the 10 by 42s with the image stabilization. So it's sort of very nuanced. And as far as light grasp and what you can see, it's really hair splitting between those and the 12 by 36s. So really all you're giving up with the 12 by 36, in my opinion anyway, is about a degree and a half field of view. And the trade-off is that you can hand hold them much longer, much easier, which I really like. That's the big benefit of using handheld binoculars for me.
Yeah, makes sense.
Have you tried the 18 by 50s?
No, no, I haven't.
I was
Just the 15 by 50s.
I was so excited to try those. I think it might have been the person who had the Quest Star lent me those. I think they actually lent them to me, and I was able to take them out for a few nights because I had them on several nights. Either I was observing with them, or they full out just like gave them to me for a week or something. At this time of year, it was like a June time frame, and I thought, well, this is great because the nights are so short. I don't want to haul out gear, and so I took them out, and they have a very small field of view. It's 3.7, I think, degree true field, which feels very, very small for a binocular. And, I know the sky fairly well, and I had a little bit of trouble pointing it and finding stuff. But I found that the exit pupil at that point, and I was going to reasonably dark skies with them. Um, Things were just a bit too dim. I was kind of surprised because the 12 by 36s and then to the 15 by 50s, I thought, wow, these could be phenomenal. I think they would be if they had like 60 millimeter lenses. But at 3.7 millimeters and whatever the exit pupil is, which ends up being like, I forget what it is, 2.8 or something like that. It just pushes the design too far too. I found the stabilization wasn't what I wanted it to be as well. Like they you really need to sit down with those. There's no standing. Whereas with the 15 by 50s, yeah, you can kind of stand, flip the button and do that a little bit. Certainly, if you're just looking for quick views out your window and the rest of the time you're going to be sitting, or if you do want to take them out and scan around the sky for very short periods of time, the 15 by 50s are awesome. But I really found them too jumpy in the 18 by 50s for sure. So those ones in my mind are rate out. So I think really the best choices, like depending on your budget and stuff, are the 12 by 36, especially if you can find them on sale. And I find those ones do go on sale more frequently. And the 15 by 50s, I think if you're really comfortable holding a pair of 10 by 50 binoculars or heavier, then if you're really comfortable with that, then you're going to love the 15 by 50s. And then the 10 by 50s, I think you kind of have to try them. For my taste, I think I'd rather have the 15 by 50s. I think they're really the two of them are very close in weight. 6 ounces difference. Plus,
Hmm.
once you have the image stabilized, 10x seems a little bit light for stabilization, if you ask me, because I can hold 10 by magnification binoculars pretty steady. 12 is right out, can't do it. So you really feel like you're getting this resolution with the 12x, and the 15x even has more. But the 10x, it's like you see it, but it's like it's not like this magic, right? So, but anyway, that's my experience.
Hmm. Yeah, sounds good.
Um, And then he mentioned about focusing on constellations, small aperture, large aperture, recommended magnification and filters, your best worst challenge. We could almost do like a whole different podcast each month like that.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, yeah.
um, could almost do that by the season. I've tried to put a little bit of that kind of material in the recent episodes. You'll notice if you go back, you'll notice at the end I've been adding in a few deep sky objects. I think Shane, we've been talking a little bit about. I think we talked about the jewel box cluster NGC 6231. I think it is in the bottom of Scorpius. I think we did that last month or the month before or something like that, and throwing in a few objects like that. And I did that again in the episode we're going to record next. So unless you have anything else to add, I think we probably need to wrap up.
Yeah, that's all I've got.
Awesome. Well, thanks for listening, everybody. Please subscribe, share the show with other stargazers you know, and send us your show ideas, observations, and questions to actualastronomy@gmail.com.
Thank you, everyone, for listening, and we hope you enjoyed the show. If you are interested in more information, would like to contact us, or if you would like to support the podcast, check out our website, actualastronomy.com.